I thought I buried the secret forever, until one sentence destroyed my entire family. This happened a few months ago, but it's been weighing on me so heavily that I'm honestly starting to unravel. I need to tell it somewhere. I'm not ready to say it out loud to anyone who knows me in real life, and Reddit seems like the safest space I've got right now. Just me, my mistakes, and a sea of strangers. So, I'm 35M. My older brother Jake is 38. He was always the golden boy in our family. Quarterback in high school, popular, loud, always the guy who walked into a room and made people smile. I was the quiet one. Still am, mostly. We were never super close, even as kids. No major fights, just that built-in sibling distance that never really closed. 15 years ago, Jake was dating this girl, Laura. He'd met her during his senior year of college and brought her home that Christmas. I remember meeting her for the first time. She wasn't like the other girls he usually dated. She was sharper, funnier, a little more grounded. And yeah, I'll be honest, I liked her right away. More than I should have. At the time, I'd just moved back home after college and was figuring out my next steps. I didn't have a job yet and was kind of drifting. Jake and Laura were spending a lot of time together, but there were these weird gaps in their relationship. Breaks. Fights. One night, Jake bailed on plans he'd made to hang out with Laura and me. She came over anyway. We opened a bottle of wine. Then another. That night, Laura and I slept together. I wish I could explain how it happened in a way that didn't make me sound like a complete asshole. But the truth is, it just happened. There wasn't this huge dramatic buildup. We were drunk. We were alone. We talked a lot. I told her things I hadn't said to anyone in months. She cried. I held her. And then it crossed the line. The next morning was one of the most awkward experiences of my life. She left before Jake came back. Neither of us said anything. A few days later, she and Jake were back together like nothing ever happened. And I never told him. I moved to another city not long after that to start my career. I tried to forget what happened. Told myself it was a one-time thing, a huge mistake, and not something that needed to come up ever again. A year later, I came home for Christmas. Jake and Laura were married. And they had a baby. Ethan. Ethan was maybe 3 or 4 months old. Jake was beaming, proud dad vibes off the charts. Laura looked tired but happy. When I held Ethan for the first time, I got this strange feeling. I've never been the superstitious type, but something inside me shifted. He had my eyes, and this little birthmark behind his ear, same place I have one. I told myself I was being crazy, that it was just nerves or projection. But something lingered, that quiet whisper that maybe, just maybe, he was mine. Over the years, that whisper never really went away. I tried to ignore it, to be the best uncle I could. I didn't want to ruin their lives. Laura never brought it up. Not once. We acted like that night never happened. Jake remained blissfully unaware, but Ethan and I got close. Closer than most uncles and nephews. I took him to ball games. I helped with his schoolwork. We had inside jokes. He'd come to me with questions he didn't feel comfortable asking his parents. He told me things he didn't tell anyone else. And yeah, I felt proud. But also guilty. Because what if? I started to notice things. Ethan's interests weren't like Jake's. He was into science, literature, music. He was analytical, introspective, so much like me it scared me sometimes. Every now and then, I'd catch Laura watching the two of us. There was something haunted in her expression. She knew. But still, we all kept the secret. A few years ago, I moved back to town for good. I got a decent job, settled down, started attending family dinners more regularly. Ethan was 12 then, still sweet, still kind, still painfully like me. And still calling me Uncle Matt. I thought I could live with it. I thought I could die with the secret. I convinced myself it was better for everyone if we just left it buried. Jake was happy. Laura and I barely spoke outside of family events. Ethan was thriving. Then came the night of the dinner. Jake and Laura invited the whole family over to celebrate Ethan getting into an advanced STEM program. Big deal. He'd been working toward it for over a year. My parents came, I came, and of course Jake was in full proud dad mode. Laura made her famous lasagna. We drank wine. Everyone was laughing. Ethan was talking about how cool it'd be to map his ancestry, maybe do one of those DNA kits just for fun. My mom was joking about family traits, about how Ethan had Jake's jaw and her father's nose. And I don't know what happened to me. I'd had a couple glasses of wine. Maybe 3. Laura looked tired. Jake was talking over everyone like usual. Ethan turned to me and said, "Wouldn't it be cool to find out where all our ancestors are from?" And I said it. Without thinking, without stopping, without any filter at all. I said, "You want me to tell you who your real dad is, kid?" The room went dead silent. I felt the words hanging in the air like smoke. Poisonous. Permanent. Jake stared at me. Laura dropped her fork. Ethan just blinked. And that was the moment everything started to collapse. The silence after I said it felt like a punch in the chest. No one breathed. No one moved. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen and the clink of a fork Laura had dropped on her plate. Jake stared at me with this look I'd never seen before, part confusion, part dawning horror, like his brain was playing catch-up but his gut had already figured it out. Ethan looked between us, completely lost. "What?" he said. Just one word. Small. Innocent. I wanted to rewind time. I wanted to slam my mouth shut, laugh it off, say I was joking, drunk, anything. But I couldn't, because the words were out there now. And Laura, she didn't say anything either. She didn't jump in to cover for me. Didn't scold me or call me an idiot. She just sat there, pale, mouth slightly open, eyes locked on her plate. Jake finally broke the silence. "What the fuck did you just say?" I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I panicked. "It was a joke," I said, too fast. "Come on, lighten up. You know me. I say dumb shit when I drink." Jake didn't even blink. "Explain the joke." My mouth went dry. Ethan kept looking at me like I dropped a live grenade on the table and now everyone was just waiting to see if it would go off. I looked at Laura. She looked at me. And that was the moment Jake turned his head and saw it. The look that passed between us. The years of silence. The guilt. Everything. "You fucking serious right now?" he said, his voice low. Laura finally spoke. "Jake. No. No. He stood up so fast his chair tipped backward. "You don't get to, Jake, me right now. What the fuck is going on?" I stood up too. "Look, just, sit down. Let's talk." Not in front of Ethan. But Ethan was already standing. "Someone just tell me what's happening." His voice cracked, and my heart cracked with it. I looked at Jake, then at Laura. No one moved. No one talked. So I did. 15 years ago, I started, my voice barely above a whisper, "Before you two got married, Laura and I, we slept together. One time. It was a mistake. It should have never happened. I thought she and Jake were broken up. I was stupid, drunk. We both were. And then I left." Jake's face was blank. A total reset. Ethan looked like someone had just turned his world inside out. "I didn't know," I continued, "I didn't know she was pregnant. Not until I came back that Christmas and Ethan was already born. I didn't say anything. We never talked about it. I told myself he wasn't mine. That it wasn't possible. That it didn't matter." I turned to Laura. "Say something." She was crying now. Not loud sobs, just silent tears rolling down her face. "I didn't know for sure," she said. "I really didn't. Jake and I had gotten back together right after that, and I found out I was pregnant a few weeks later. I couldn't tell whose he was. I didn't want to know." Jake looked at both of us, and then, like something snapped inside him, he grabbed his glass of wine and hurled it at the wall. It shattered with a sharp, wet explosion. "You unbelievable fucking pieces of shit. Jake, don't." He pointed at me. "Don't say another word. You've been in his life this whole time. My brother. My own goddamn brother. You knew, didn't you? You fucking knew." "I suspected," I said quietly. "But I didn't know for sure. I didn't want to hurt you." Jake laughed bitterly. "Didn't want to hurt me? You think this is less painful because you kept it a secret for 15 fucking years?" Ethan sat back down, staring at the table like it was the only thing keeping him tethered to earth. He didn't say anything. He didn't cry. Just stared. My mom started to speak, but my dad held up his hand. "Don't," he said. "Let them finish." Jake turned to Laura. "And you? How could you look me in the eye every day and pretend everything was fine? How could you let me raise a kid that might not even be mine?" Laura wiped her face. "Because I didn't want to lose you. I didn't know. I told myself it didn't matter. That you were his dad no matter what." Jake looked like he was going to throw something else, but instead he just walked out. Straight out the front door. No jacket, no keys. Just gone. My mom finally spoke. "Matt, is it true?" I nodded. "I don't know for sure. But yeah, it's possible." My dad looked at me with something between disappointment and disgust. Jesus Christ. Ethan finally spoke. I want a DNA test. The room froze again. I need to know, he said, staring at me. I need to know if you're my dad. My throat went dry again. Okay, I said. If that's what you want, I'll do it. He stood up, grabbed his backpack, and walked to the door. I'm staying at Ryan's tonight. Laura tried to stop him, but he shook her off and left. The door clicked shut. I've never heard a sound so loud in my life. After that, everyone started moving at once. My mom was crying, Laura ran upstairs, and my dad poured himself a drink and sat in the corner without saying a word. I was still standing, like I hadn't figured out how to sit down yet. The gravity of what I'd done hadn't fully landed. I didn't know if it ever would. Jake didn't come home that night. Ethan didn't come back the next day. And me? I didn't sleep, not even for a minute. That sentence. I thought it was just a slip. Just a drunken comment, but it blew my entire family apart. The days after that dinner felt unreal, like the air had thickened and time had stretched into something syrupy and slow. I didn't go to work. I didn't eat much. I just sat on my couch staring into nothing, looping every second of that night over and over again. What I said, the way everyone looked at me. The glass breaking, Ethan's face, Jake's silence. It was like reliving a nightmare I had created myself and didn't know how to end. My phone was quiet. I didn't hear from Jake. Not a word from Ethan. My parents sent a couple of messages at first. We need to talk, are you okay? But they stopped after I didn't respond. Laura texted me once, we need to talk. I left it on read. I just couldn't. The guilt came in waves. Sometimes it was a dull ache in my chest. Other times, it hit like a truck. I'd walk past Ethan's drawings still on my fridge, or the book he left here last week, or the birthday card he made me last year with a joke about how I was his second favorite adult after his dad, and I'd have to sit down and breathe. I wasn't his uncle, I was his father. I had always been his father. And I never told him. On the fourth day, I broke. I pulled myself off the couch, took a shower, and sent Ethan a text. Hey, I know everything's a mess. I just want to talk when you're ready. No pressure. No response. That night, I got the email. Your 23andMe results are ready. At first I didn't even remember ordering the test. I must have done it right after the dinner, on autopilot, in shock. But there it was. I logged in. The screen loaded. Parent, child match. Ethan, last name, there it was. Real, scientific, unarguable, the kind of confirmation I had both dreaded and needed for 15 years. It wasn't a question anymore. I was his biological father. I stared at the screen for a long time. My eyes burned, my stomach churned, then I closed the laptop and just sat there, in the dark, with that truth pressing down on me like a physical weight. The next morning, I drove to my parents' place. My mom opened the door. Her face was pale, her eyes swollen. I didn't know if she'd been crying or if she just hadn't slept. She stepped aside and let me in without a word. Jake's in the backyard, she said. He was pacing, cigarette in hand, even though he hadn't smoked in over 10 years. I stepped outside and stood a few feet away, not sure if I should speak first. I did the test, I said eventually. I know, Ethan told me. He got his results too. I nodded. It's official. He's mine. Jake didn't look at me right away. Just stared at the grass like it had answers. Then he turned, slowly, and met my eyes. He looked exhausted. I raised him, he said. For 15 years. He called me dad. I know. I was there for everything. His first steps. His first words. Every school play. Every damn parent-teacher meeting. I know, I said again. There was nothing else to say. And you? His voice cracked. You just got to be the cool uncle. No discipline, no hard days. Just show up, give him gifts, take him out for ice cream, and then disappear again. I never meant to disappear. But you did. You disappeared when it mattered. You disappeared the moment you decided to lie. To let me believe he was mine. I didn't know for sure. You knew enough. I couldn't argue. Because he was right. I had known enough. Enough to ask. Enough to wonder. Enough to tell the truth. And I never did. I thought I was protecting you, I said. No, he shot back. You were protecting yourself. And you used my son as a shield. That one hit hard. Harder than anything else. I didn't know how to be a father. You didn't even try, he said. And walked back inside without looking at me again. I didn't follow him. That evening, Laura came over. She looked hollowed out, like someone had drained all the color from her. We didn't hug, just sat at opposite ends of the couch. He hates me, she said. Ethan, he won't speak to me. He doesn't hate you, I said, but it felt weak. He should, she whispered. I lied to him his whole life. Every time he asked why he had your nose, or why he didn't look like Jake, I brushed it off. Every time he asked questions about when we got married, I changed the subject. I lied and now he looks at me like I'm a stranger. He's hurt, I said. It'll take time. She shook her head. He wants to move in with Jake full time. I nodded. Maybe that's for the best. At least for now. Then she asked the question I hadn't been ready to hear. Are you going to be his dad now? I froze. I don't know what that means, I said honestly. I've always been there, but I don't know if I ever really was his dad. Well, biologically, you are. And now everyone knows. That changes things. I'm not going to force it. I'll be here when he's ready. But I won't push. You need to decide, she said, standing up. Because if you don't, someone else will. That night, as I was lying in bed, my phone buzzed. A message from Ethan. Why didn't you tell me? 3 simple words. But they carried every ounce of pain he felt. And I had no good answer. I stared at the screen for what felt like forever. Then I replied, I was scared. He didn't respond. The next day, I didn't go to work again. I couldn't. Instead, I drove by Jake's house. I didn't go in, just parked across the street and watched like some weirdo stalker. Ethan was at the kitchen table, doing homework. Jake walked in and said something. Ethan smiled, just for a second, but it was real, and that smile broke me more than the silence ever could. I realized something then. The secret was out, the damage was done, but the story wasn't over. And whether I liked it or not, I was part of it now. Not as the fun uncle. Not as the scared little brother. As a father, and I had no idea what to do next. A few weeks passed after the DNA results, and the silence that had once felt like a punishment started to morph into something worse, indifference. Not from me. I was still stuck in the same mental loop of guilt and what-ifs, but from everyone else. My parents stopped checking in. My father had gone ice cold. He didn't yell or lecture, he just shut down. My mom tried to act like everything could go back to normal if she just baked enough cookies and smiled hard enough, but I could see it in her eyes. She was grieving. She'd lost her family without any funeral to help her mourn it. Jake didn't talk to me. Laura stopped texting. Ethan had vanished from my world like someone had hit delete on the past 15 years. I didn't know what he was doing, how he was sleeping, what he was thinking. The only things I heard came secondhand from my mother, and even those details got vaguer over time. He's at school, he's quiet, he's staying with Jake. No emotion, just updates. And me? I just existed. Woke up, drank coffee, stared at my phone, went to work when I could, came home, stared at the wall. It was like the color had been sucked out of everything. Every object reminded me of him. The model rockets we used to build. The t-shirt he gave me that said, "Best Uncle Ever." His voice in my head asking if I'd read the new sci-fi book he loved. The absence was louder than any argument. I kept trying to reach out, even when it made me feel pathetic. I sent him messages on his birthday. On the day of his first debate meet. I wrote things like, "Proud of you, always here," or, "Thinking of you today." Never anything that pressured him. I just wanted to remind him that I existed. That I cared. No replies. Eventually, I stopped sending them too. You can only write into a void for so long before it feels like you're trying to hold a conversation with a wall. One afternoon, I found myself parked in front of Jake's house without realizing how I'd even gotten there. His truck was in the driveway. Ethan's bike leaned against the garage. My heart started hammering like I'd broken some law just by being there. I sat for 10 minutes before I worked up the nerve to ring the doorbell. Jake opened the door, saw me, and sighed. He didn't look shocked, just tired. He didn't say anything. "I'm not here to fight," I said. I don't even know. I guess I just needed to see him. Or you. Or someone. "He doesn't want to see you," Jake said. Calm. Flat. I nodded. I figured. I don't want to be a ghost. I'm not asking for anything. I just want him to know I'm not walking away. Jake stepped out, closing the door behind him. He stood on the porch, arms crossed. "You know what I've realized," he said. "You got to skip the hard part. For 15 years, you got to be the fun guy. The one he laughed with, the one who didn't have to say no. And all that time, I was the one putting in the work. The homework, the punishments, the long nights, the real stuff. I nodded again. You were his father, in every way that counts. Jake's jaw tightened. No, I was his father in every way. Period. Don't soften it. He wasn't wrong. I just don't want to disappear, I said quietly. Jake took a breath. Then don't make it about you. That one hit hard. I thanked him for his time and left without pushing. A few days later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was one folded sheet of notebook paper in Ethan's handwriting. I recognized it instantly. Please don't try to be my dad. I don't know what to do with that. I can't breathe when I think about it. I just want time. Please give me that. I held that note in my hands for hours. It was the first thing I'd received from him since everything blew up. It wasn't angry. It wasn't hateful. It was hurt. And I finally understood. This wasn't about my guilt. This wasn't about whether I deserved forgiveness. This wasn't even about me at all. He was drowning in the truth. And I had thrown him in the water. After that, I pulled back completely. No more texts. No emails. No accidental drive-bys. I started going to therapy twice a week. My therapist was this older woman with a quiet voice and a stare that cut through all my bullshit. The first time I sat down in her office, I said, I ruined someone's life. She said, whose? I said, my son's. She nodded, like she'd heard worse. Over time, she helped me separate what was mine to carry and what wasn't. Helped me realize that I couldn't force healing on someone else's timeline just because my guilt was too heavy to sit with. That grief wasn't about what you lost, it was about what you never got to have. I started going back to work full-time. I stopped avoiding my friends. I took up running, even though I hated every step. I just needed something to move forward with, even if it hurt. Then, one night, Laura called. It was the first time we'd spoken in over a month. Her voice was tight. Jake's in the hospital, she said. Nothing life-threatening. Some infection that spread. He's going to be fine. But Ethan's scared. I thought you should know. I thanked her. Didn't ask for more. Didn't rush to the hospital. I sat on my couch, holding my phone like it might ring again with worse news. He was scared. He should be. I remembered how panicked I used to get when my mom had a cold as a kid. When your world's that small, one person getting sick feels like the ground opening up. I wondered if he thought of me that way. If, in his fear, my name even crossed his mind. Probably not. Maybe someday. Maybe not ever. A few days later, I saw them at the grocery store. I was in the frozen aisle, reaching for some shitty pizza, when I saw Ethan 3 rows down. Jake was with him. They didn't see me. I just watched. Ethan was smiling. Not big, not loud. But it was real. He looked okay. And I realized, maybe that's all I was allowed to want for now. Not reconciliation. Not father-son bonding. Just his okayness. I let them leave without saying a word. I'm not proud of what I did. I'm not asking for sympathy. But I do hope, someday, when the static clears, he'll remember that I showed up. That I stayed quiet when he needed quiet. That I didn't disappear when I finally learned what it meant to really stay. Somewhere along the way, you stop expecting closure. At first, it's all you want. You play the same scenes in your head over and over again, rewriting your lines, imagining a different outcome. One where you spoke up sooner. One where you were brave. One where the damage was smaller. But eventually, your brain gets tired. The loops slow down. You don't stop thinking about it. You just stop hoping it'll ever make sense. I settled into that space. Not peace. Not resolution. Just acceptance. A year had passed since the dinner. 1 full year since I opened my mouth and everything fell apart. I knew the exact day not because I marked it on the calendar, but because my body remembered. I woke up with this strange heaviness, like I was wearing clothes that didn't fit. Like I was being pulled down into the same hole all over again. Nothing much had changed. Jake still didn't talk to me. My parents and I had reached some weird, quiet truce. They invited me to dinner sometimes, but no one ever mentioned Ethan. Laura moved to another city for work. I hadn't seen her in months. Her absence felt like a relief, though I hated myself for feeling that way. I still hadn't seen Ethan face to face since that night. Not really. Just those accidental glimpses. Across the street, in a store, once at a gas station. Always distant. Always out of reach. I didn't try anymore. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally understood what it meant to do nothing for him, not for me. That was the hardest lesson in all of this. That sometimes the best thing you can do for someone you love is to stay the hell away. But that didn't stop me from thinking about him. Wondering how he was doing. What he looked like now. Whether he'd kept up with science competitions. Whether he still read at night until 1 a.m. Whether he was still angry. Whether I'd ever get a second chance, even a small one. I thought about writing him again. Not a text. A letter. Something slower. Something he could open when he was ready, or not at all. So I did. I sat at my kitchen table, pen in hand, and wrote the whole thing out. No edits. No filters. Just the truth. Dear Ethan, I don't know if you'll ever read this, and that's okay. You don't owe me anything. Not your time, not your attention, definitely not your forgiveness. I just want you to know a few things. First, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for lying to you by not telling you the truth sooner. I'm sorry for not being strong enough to say what I should have said years ago. I thought I was protecting you. I wasn't. I see that now. I was protecting myself, and in the process, I hurt you more than I ever imagined I could. Second, I don't expect you to ever see me as your dad. Jake is your dad. He always has been. He's the one who raised you, showed up for you, carried the weight of it all. I'm not here to try to replace him. I wouldn't even know how. Third, I've never stopped thinking about you. I don't know if that makes things better or worse. But it's true. You're the first thing I think about when I wake up and the last thing I think about before I fall asleep. I carry your silence with me everywhere I go. And I deserve that silence. But still, I hope. Not that things go back to the way they were. That's impossible, but maybe one day, when it doesn't hurt as much, you'll want to talk. And I'll be here. No pressure. No expectations. Just, here, always. Love, Matt. I stared at the letter for a long time. Folded it, put it in an envelope. Wrote his name on the front. Then I set it on my nightstand. It stayed there for 2 weeks. Every day I'd look at it, wondering if I should drop it in the mailbox. Every day I didn't, because the truth is, I didn't write it for him. Not really. I wrote it for me. I wrote it so that if I ever did see him again, I wouldn't have to scramble for words. I wrote it so I could put the guilt somewhere outside of my body, even just for a little while. I wrote it so I wouldn't forget who I was at my worst, and at my best. Then one day, I came home from work, walked into my apartment, and stopped cold. The envelope was gone. It took me a second to realize what had happened. My mom had come by earlier to drop off some leftovers. She still had a key. She'd been in my room. She must have seen it. I checked the counter. No note, no message, just an empty nightstand and the sound of my own breathing. I didn't call her. I didn't ask. I just waited. 3 days later, I got a text from an unknown number. Got your letter. Nothing else. No name. No emoji. Just 3 words. I stared at it for a long time. I thought about replying. Thought about writing something perfect. Thought about asking what he thought. Whether it helped. Whether he hated me less. Instead, I just typed, okay. And I left it at that. I don't know what happens next. Maybe nothing. Maybe someday he'll text again. Maybe he won't. Maybe that message was the beginning of something. Or maybe it was the end. I have no idea, but for the first time in over a year, I slept through the night. And in the morning, when I looked in the mirror, I didn't flinch.